I should have known things would change the moment the desert swallowed the horizon. There was something about the way the light stretched endlessly across the dunes, every ripple of sand glowing gold under the late afternoon sun, that made me feel both exposed and small. It wasn't just the desert that unsettled me, it was him. Tariq. My oldest friend, my occasional rival, and the one person who could unravel me with a single smile. I shifted in my seat as the jeep bounced along the uneven ground, pretending to adjust my camera bag while sneaking a glance at him. He was at the wheel, his profile sharp against the bright sky, eyes narrowed against the glare. He looked as though he belonged here, the desert bending to him instead of resisting, while I sat in the passenger seat like a misplaced traveler. We hadn't seen each other in nearly a year. Work, distance, excuses, life had stacked them all between us. Yet here I was, saying yes when he invited me on this research trip. One last adventure before you forget how to breathe, he teased over the phone, and I couldn't resist. Tariq always knew how to bait me with just the right words. Our friendship had always been like this, equal parts laughter and silence, arguments that lasted hours and then dissolved into something gentler. He was the storm, unpredictable and thrilling. I was the steady current, content to watch, to follow, to quietly anchor. At least that's what I told myself. You're quiet, Tariq said suddenly, glancing over, his tone teasing but edged with curiosity. Just taking it all in, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. His lips curled into that half-smile I knew too well, the one that meant he wasn't buying it but wouldn't press. My chest tightened. It had been years since I admitted, even to myself, that I wanted more than friendship. That every accidental touch lingered too long in my memory, that his laugh could undo me faster than any compliment. The jeep lurched, sending my knee brushing against his. I pulled away quickly, but not before the warmth of it shot through me like a spark. He didn't seem to notice. Or maybe he did and he was just better at hiding it. The desert stretched on ahead of us, vast and unknowable. And for the first time in years so did the space between us. The jeep rattled to a stop near a cluster of tents pitched against a ridge of sandstone. The camp looked almost fragile in the expanse of the desert, canvas walls flapping lightly in the wind, shadows already stretching long as the sun began its slow descent. Tariq cut the engine and leaned back with a satisfied sigh, his arm resting casually along the back of my seat. Too close, too natural, too much for me to ignore. See? Not a single wrong turn, he said, a glint of pride in his eyes. I snorted, pulling off my sunglasses. You nearly drove us into a sand dune twice. Details, he said, waving a hand. Besides, you've always been the navigator. I'm just the reckless driver. That was us in a sentence. He rushed headfirst into everything. Adventures, arguments, even love once, though I never asked too many questions about that. I was the careful one, the planner. And somehow, that balance had kept us tethered together since university. Nights of cramming for exams fueled by too much coffee, mornings spent arguing over which of us would get the last pastry in the cafe. We had woven ourselves into each other's lives in ways that still surprised me. I followed him out of the jeep, the dry air brushing hot against my face. The desert smelled faintly of dust and sun-baked stone, and there was an odd comfort in it. Tariq grabbed my duffel from the back before I could protest. You're still stubborn about carrying everything yourself, huh? He teased. And you're still insufferable, I shot back, though my chest warmed at the way he slung my bag over his shoulder without hesitation. Inside the camp, we found our tent, one larger than I expected, divided into two narrow sleeping cots with a shared lantern between them. My heart gave a traitorous leap. 2 beds, close enough that if I stretched out I could almost touch him. You'll survive, right? Tariq grinned as he dropped my bag on the left cot. I know you like your personal space. I'll manage, I muttered, hoping my voice didn't betray me. He didn't press, just hummed in mock sympathy before ducking out to talk to one of the guides. I let out a slow breath, fingers brushing over the rough fabric of his cot as if it could ground me. Later, as twilight spread violet and indigo across the sky, we sat side by side outside the tent, a small fire crackling between us. He handed me a tin cup of strong, bitter tea. Remember that night we camped in the rain back in Wales? Tariq said, a mischievous spark in his eyes. I laughed instantly, choking slightly on the tea. How could I forget? You swore you'd packed waterproof gear and everything got soaked. We had to share a sleeping bag just to avoid freezing. He grinned wider, teeth flashing in the firelight. You kicked me all night. You hogged the blanket. You were shivering. We looked at each other then, and for a moment the teasing slipped into silence. His gaze lingered, warm and steady, and I felt the air thicken between us. I broke first, glancing down at my tea, pretending to sip. A sudden gust of wind scattered sparks from the fire, drawing us back to the present. Tarek leaned closer, shielding the flames with his broad shoulders. His knee brushed mine again, and this time he didn't move away. My pulse quickened. That was when the complication revealed itself. The guide came over, apologetic. One of the supply bags was left behind. Extra bedding, spare water, still on the truck. We'll have to make do tonight. Tarek turned to me, eyebrow raised, amusement already flickering in his eyes. Well, he said, dragging the word out, looks like history might repeat itself. Think you can handle sharing again? Heat rushed to my cheeks, though I masked it with a scoff. Don't get used to it. But the truth was, my heart had already leapt at the thought. The desert night fell quickly, the heat bleeding away until the air turned sharp and cool. By the time Tarek and I slipped into the tent, the fire outside had dwindled to glowing embers. The lantern on the floor cast a warm circle of light, shadows dancing across the canvas walls. Our missing supplies meant there was only one blanket between us. One thin blanket. Tarek didn't look remotely concerned. He tossed it onto his cot with a careless shrug and began unlacing his boots. It's fine, he said, stretching out like he owned the space. We've survived worse. I stared at the blanket as though it might suddenly sprout legs and walk over to cover me. That was years ago. And it was one night. This will also be one night, he said with infuriating calm. His gaze flicked to me, a glimmer of amusement tugging at his lips. Unless you're scared you'll kick me again. I busied myself with unpacking, though there was little to distract me, just my notebook, my camera, and a clean shirt. I'm not scared, I muttered, which sounded more defensive than I intended. The truth was, I wasn't scared of discomfort. I was scared of how much I wanted this. Of how being close to him had never been just practical for me. I remembered Wales, how his breath warmed the back of my neck, how every shift of his body made me hyper-aware of the space we shared. I told myself then that it didn't matter, that he didn't notice. I wasn't sure I could convince myself again. Still, when he patted the empty space beside him on the cot, I hesitated only a moment before lowering myself down. The canvas dipped beneath our combined weight, pulling us closer until our shoulders brushed. See? Not so bad, Tarek said softly, pulling the blanket over us both. Not bad. Not bad at all, except for the way my entire body tensed, every nerve alight with his nearness. His scent clung to the blanket, earthy and clean, tinged with desert wind. His arm rested casually at his side, but each time he shifted, his knuckles grazed my wrist. It was nothing, probably unconscious. But to me it was everything. I turned on my side, facing away, pretending to settle in. My heart hammered against the thin mattress, loud enough I was sure he could hear. I closed my eyes, willing myself to sleep, but his voice broke the silence. You're really quiet tonight, he murmured. I'm tired, I lied. He chuckled, low and warm. You always say that when you don't want to talk. I froze. He knew me too well. He always had. Before I could respond, a sudden howl of wind rattled the tent walls. The lantern flickered, casting wild shadows. Sand hissed against the canvas, relentless, like the desert itself was trying to claw its way inside. Tarek pushed himself up on one elbow, frowning. Sandstorm, he muttered. I was hoping it'd pass us by. The sound grew louder, deafening, the tent shuddering with each gust. Instinctively, I edged closer to him. He noticed, of course he did, and without hesitation he shifted, pulling me nearer so my head rested against his shoulder. It's fine, he said, voice steady, calm in a way I couldn't be. The tent will hold. I wanted to argue, to insist I didn't need comfort, but the truth was I didn't want to move. His body radiated warmth against mine, solid and grounding. My hand twitched against the blanket, almost reaching for his before I forced it still. Minutes stretched. The storm outside raged, but inside it was only his steady breathing, the subtle rise and fall of his chest beneath my cheek. I thought I felt his arm tighten briefly around me, but when I glanced up, his expression was unreadable. I should have pulled back then. I should have laughed it off, made some sarcastic comment, restored the easy banter that usually kept me safe. But I didn't. I stayed, caught in the dangerous comfort of his embrace. The silence between us shifted, heavy with something unspoken. His thumb brushed absent-mindedly along my arm, barely a touch, but enough to send sparks skittering down my spine. Was it accidental? A reflex? Or something more? Tarek, I whispered before I could stop myself. My voice was raw, almost swallowed by the storm. He tilted his head, looking down at me. His eyes caught the lantern light, dark and intent. Yeah. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Fear slammed into me, fear of what I wanted to say, of what it would mean if he didn't feel the same. So instead I shook my head. Nothing. For a moment I thought I saw disappointment flicker across his face. But then he smiled, soft and lopsided, the way he did when he didn't want to press. Get some sleep. We'll need energy tomorrow. I nodded, but sleep was the last thing on my mind. As the storm raged outside, I lay there in the darkness, heart aching with the weight of everything unsaid. And beside me Tariq stayed close, his presence a comfort and a torment all at once. The storm didn't pass quickly. Hours later, the wind still clawed at the tent walls, rattling the poles, filling the night with its relentless hiss. Inside, the air was thick, the lantern dim to conserve oil, leaving only the faintest glow. My body ached from lying so still beside him, but the restlessness wasn't from discomfort. It was from him. His warmth pressed along my side, the slow rhythm of his breathing, the way our blanket rose and fell together as though we were sharing not just the same space but the same pulse. I told myself I could keep pretending. That I could close my eyes, wait for the storm to end, and bury this ache in silence like I had for years. But then he shifted, rolling onto his side to face me, and the pretense unraveled. You're not sleeping either, Tariq said quietly. I forced a half-smile. Guess I forgot how loud a sandstorm can be. He hummed, unconvinced. In the flickering lantern light, his gaze lingered on me longer than necessary. My chest tightened. What? I asked, my voice thinner than I wanted. You've been different, he said, blunt as always. Since we got here. Quieter. Holding back. I swallowed hard. I'm just tired. Work's been. Don't, he cut in not unkindly. Don't give me some excuse about work. I know you better than that. The words hit deep because he was right. He always was. And that terrified me more than the storm outside. I'm fine, I lied again, though the tremor in my voice betrayed me. He reached out then, his hand brushing lightly against mine under the blanket. Not quite holding it, not quite letting go. The touch was casual enough that I could pretend it meant nothing, but my body betrayed me, heat surging, breath catching. Tell me the truth, Tariq said softly. I stared at our almost joined hands, my heart hammering so hard it drowned out the storm. I wanted to speak, to pour out everything I'd buried, but fear wrapped around my throat like a noose. And then he did it. He laughed, low and gentle, as though to ease the weight of the moment. God, you're stubborn. Always have been. Remember when you refused to admit you liked that stupid band in college? I had to catch you singing along just to make you admit it. I let out a shaky laugh, tension cracking just slightly. You never let me live that down. Because you never let me in unless I push, he said, his tone shifting again, quieter now, threaded with something I couldn't name. I don't want to push anymore. Not with you. The words settled between us, heavy, dangerous. I looked up, meeting his eyes, and for once he wasn't teasing. He was searching. Waiting. My throat went dry. The truth pressed against my lips, begging to be freed. Say it, my mind screamed. Say it before the chance disappears. My voice cracked. I tried again, softer. I'm scared, Tariq. His brows knit. Scared of what? Of this, I whispered, the word breaking on my tongue. Of saying something I can't take back. Of ruining us. Silence. Only the storm outside and the thunder of my own pulse. Then, slowly, his hand slid fully into mine, fingers threading with mine like it was the easiest thing in the world. You think I don't feel it too? He asked, almost a whisper. My breath caught. You what? He exhaled, almost a laugh but too heavy, too raw. You think I haven't noticed? The way you look away too fast or how you shut down when I get too close. I thought maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I was projecting. But it's been there. For years. I couldn't speak. My chest felt too tight, my throat too full. He squeezed my hand gently. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to risk losing you either. The words hit like a rush of air after drowning. I blinked hard, the sting of unshed tears catching me off guard. You, Tariq, He shifted closer, so close the blanket cocooned us in our own world. His forehead rested lightly against mine, his breath warm across my lips. Just say it, he murmured. Don't run from it this time. My whole body trembled. But this time I didn't pull away. I've been in love with you for years, I confessed, voice breaking with the weight of it. And I was too afraid to tell you. Too afraid you'd laugh or worse, walk away. The silence that followed was unbearable. Every muscle in me braced for rejection. For pity. For anything but what I wanted most. And then he kissed me. It wasn't dramatic, not at first. Just the soft press of his lips against mine, tentative, careful, as though testing if I'd flinch. But I didn't. I leaned in, my free hand curling into his shirt, holding on like I'd been waiting my whole life. The kiss deepened, slow and aching, years of restraint unraveling in the space of a heartbeat. When we finally pulled back, I was breathless, dazed, staring at him like I'd never really seen him before. He was smiling. Not his teasing grin, not the cocky smirk I knew too well, but something softer, almost vulnerable. "That's the last thing I'd ever walk away from," he said quietly. My laugh broke on a sob, relief flooding through me. "You have no idea how long I've wanted to hear that." "Oh, I think I do." He brushed his thumb over my cheek, tender, grounding. "I've been waiting for you to catch up." I buried my face against his shoulder, overwhelmed, the storm outside fading into nothing compared to the storm inside me. His arms wrapped around me, strong and steady, holding me as though he had no intention of letting go. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid. The storm was still raging outside, but inside the tent, everything had gone quiet. Or maybe it was just me. My world had narrowed down to the feel of Tariq's arms around me, the warmth of his breath at my temple, the steady thrum of his heartbeat beneath my hand. For years I'd imagined what it might feel like. Now that it was real, it was almost unbearable in its simplicity. I pulled back just enough to see his face. He was still smiling, that rare, softened smile, the one that stripped away all his bravado. Made my chest ache. "You're staring?" he teased lightly. "Can you blame me?" The words slipped out before I could stop them, half laugh, half confession. His grin widened. "So you do find me irresistible." I groaned and shoved at his shoulder, though not nearly hard enough to move him. "I just admitted I've been in love with you for years, and that's your takeaway?" "Of course," he said, mock serious. "I need to savor this moment. The mighty, stubborn you finally admitting defeat." I shook my head, but laughter bubbled up anyway, breaking through the tightness in my chest. For the first time, the weight of secrecy was gone. The air between us felt lighter, freer. We settled back under the blanket, this time without hesitation. I curled into him, and he pulled me closer like it was the most natural thing in the world. For once, I didn't fight it. I kept telling myself it was safer not to say anything. I admitted, my voice low, that I'd rather have you as a friend than risk losing you completely. His fingers brushed absently along my forearm, tracing lazy circles. Funny. I told myself the same thing. I looked up at him, startled. "Really?" He nodded. "You think you're the only one who's scared? I've wanted this for so long I didn't trust myself to say it out loud. What if I was wrong? What if I ruined everything?" The vulnerability in his voice cut through me. I reached up, cupping his cheek, letting my thumb rest against his jaw. "You weren't wrong." His eyes softened, and he leaned down to kiss me again, slower this time, unhurried. When we parted, we stayed close, foreheads resting together. "So what now?" I asked after a long pause, my voice barely above a whisper. "Now?" He smirked, and for a second I thought he'd dodged the question. But then he grew serious again, his thumb brushing over the back of my hand. "Now we stop pretending. No more hiding, no more waiting for the right moment. We figure it out together." My chest tightened with something that felt dangerously like hope. "You make it sound easy." He chuckled softly. "It won't be. You know me, I'll drive you crazy. You'll overthink everything. We'll argue. But we'll have this." His grip on my hand tightened. "And that's worth it." I couldn't help the smile that spread across my face. "You really think we can make it work?" "I don't think," he said firmly. "I know." The conviction in his voice steadied me in a way nothing else could have. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding and rested my head against his shoulder. Outside, the storm still howled. But here, cocooned in his arms, I felt untouchable. "Tomorrow," Tariq murmured, almost to himself, "we'll wake up, the storm will clear, and we'll start fresh. Together." "Together?" I echoed, tasting the word like a promise. We lay there in the dim light, laughter and quiet conversation spilling out between soft kisses, teasing remarks turning into gentle admissions. Every touch felt new, every glance charged with a meaning we no longer had to hide. For the first time in years, the future didn't terrify me. It glowed just beyond the horizon, waiting. And I knew, as I drifted toward sleep with Tariq's arm draped protectively around me, that no matter what storms came our way, we'd face them side by side. The desert woke quietly. By dawn, the storm had faded into silence, leaving behind a world transformed, smooth dunes sculpted by the night wind, the air crisp and still. I pushed back the flap of the tent and stepped outside, blinking against the pale morning light. The sand stretched endlessly, glittering like powdered gold. It felt like standing at the edge of something vast, uncharted. Behind me, Tarek stirred, emerging barefoot, hair mussed from sleep. He looked different in the soft light, unguarded, almost boyish. My heart did that reckless thing again, the leap I'd tried to suppress for years. Only now I didn't have to. Beautiful, he murmured, coming to stand beside me. The desert? I asked, though I knew what he meant. He turned, smirking. The view. I rolled my eyes, but warmth crept up my neck all the same. You're insufferable. And you love it. The banter slipped between us as easily as it always had, but now it carried something else. An intimacy that made even the simplest words feel like a promise. One of the guides waved from a distance, calling that breakfast was ready. We had hours of travel ahead, supplies to gather, maps to review. But for a moment none of that mattered. Tarek reached for my hand without hesitation, threading his fingers through mine. It was such a small gesture, but it sent a rush of warmth through me, steadier than the storm of last night. I squeezed back, grounding myself in the reality of it. We weren't hiding anymore. Think the others will notice? I asked, nodding toward camp. Let them, he said simply. I'm done pretending. The certainty in his voice left no room for doubt. For years I had feared what might break us. But standing here, with the desert stretched wide and endless before us, I realized something else. We'd already survived storms together. We could weather more. As we walked toward camp, he brushed his shoulder against mine, subtle but deliberate. You know, I was right all along, he said. About what? That you kick in your sleep. His grin widened when I groaned. But don't worry, I'll survive. I always have. I laughed, shaking my head. You're impossible. Impossible, he agreed cheerfully, and yours. The words landed soft but sure, and my chest tightened with something that felt like home. Later, as we loaded the jeep, I caught him watching me through the morning haze. Not with mischief, not with challenge, but with quiet steadiness. The kind of look that said, I choose this. I choose you. And in that moment, I knew. Whatever came, distance, arguments, the world itself, we'd find a way. Because for the first time, the road ahead wasn't mine alone to walk. We climbed into the jeep, the horizon stretching endless and golden. Tarek started the engine, flashing me a grin that promised more than words ever could. Ready? He asked. I glanced at him, at the desert waiting before us, at the hand that had found mine again without hesitation. Yeah, I said softly. This time I'm ready. The jeep lurched forward, carrying us into the wide open unknown, not as friends clinging to silence but as something truer, stronger. Something that felt like the beginning of everything.